Alright, so you've probably seen online very nicely curated grids and very standardized bodies of work and thought, hey, how do I get this? How do I find a consistent style across the board? I also want it. And let me tell you, me too. I'm also in the pursuit of a defined style. So what I did was force myself out of my comfort zone, and for a month I shot, edited, and rediscovered pictures in black and white. I'm going to share with you in this video what my experiences are and how we're definitely closer to having a style than we think. Plus, stay tuned for some tips at the end. Hi, I'm Cesar, and as a product manager who also creates content, I'm on a mission to create smarter, not harder. So join me as I share what works, what doesn't, and everything in between. So I want to divide this video in three. First, I want to talk about why is it that we are closer to having a style than we think. Second, I want to share my experiences on getting myself out of my comfort zone and shot, edited, and rediscovered pictures in black and white. And third, I want to give some tips that I'm also going to follow moving forward in my journey to try to find my own style. So let's start from the beginning, and that is why is it that we are closer to having a style than we think. I'm saying this because it all comes down to introspection. So if you stop for a second and look at your previous released work or the previous work that you've done in general, you don't even have to have released. You will find that you gravitate towards certain stylistic choices. For example, you may gravitate towards shooting on a very specific light or specific characters or subject matters. In general, if you pick the pieces of work that you like the most and then you have a look at it, then you most likely will find that they are more consistent than you thought originally. Another thing that's very important here to keep in mind is that whatever comes into you, so all the input that you take, that's the music, that's the movies, TV shows, or any type of art that you consume, already kind of shapes as well what is it that you're producing. This means that whatever is it that you consume and you don't like, you'll probably not reproduce. And the things that you consume and you do like will kind of shape or give a little bit of hints on every piece of work that you are producing. And also the gear you use subconsciously defines the style that you are producing. In my case, when I'm shooting out there, even if I'm with a zoom lens, I tend to punch in a little bit. I have noticed that I don't like to shoot super wide. That of course may change if I force myself to do it, to try to change my style, but naturally I don't do it. This means that if I take a look at my work before, more often than not, I will find narrower shots that already say something about me having a style. What I'm trying to say here is that if you stop for a bit and have a look at your work and then you pick what you have liked the most, you will find some style that you may not even know was there. This is important to know because you may have thought that you're starting from scratch in trying to find a style, but we're not. No one's starting from scratch because we're already influenced by our outside world and by our decisions that we take, which means that we can start with a base, and that base is what we like already. Another point that I want to touch on here is that style ends, that you will never have a certain style forever. So if you're looking for something, that something will disappear at some point in a way. Look at certain artists and see how their careers have changed throughout the years. You have the Beatles, who started being very poppy, jolly, happy, and doing these kind of songs. But then towards the end of their career, they were more experimental, they were trying some psychedelic stuff, and it was natural for them because all of their input changed, which influenced what they were outputting as well. You have other artists doing that as well, like the Arctic Monkeys, Taylor Swift, that also has changed throughout the years. And not only in music, right? You also have directors like Wes Anderson, painters like Vincent van Gogh, and you will see, and it's important to know all of this because as a person producing some sort of art, you need to accept that you just need to go a little bit with the flow and not necessarily force trying to get a style out of it. But of course, sometimes you just want to try some things out. And that's what I did. And that is what I want to talk about now, sharing my experiences on this month shooting in black and white. So as I said, I shot in black and white for 1 month to try to force myself out of my comfort zone. I didn't only shoot in black and white for 1 month, but I also tried to rediscover pictures that I already had posted or that didn't work and try to test a little bit how would that work in black and white during this month. So that's a little bit how I want to split this part of the video. I want to talk about the old photos that worked, the old photos that didn't work, and the completely new pictures that I took in black and white. So let's start from the first one, and that is the old photos that work. For this, during this introspection that I was doing, I actually realized that old photos that already had work, that I already had published, kind of found new life in them. I actually saw new opportunities with these pictures. Some of them, of course, didn't work, but with the ones that did, I felt really happy with, because it is just almost as reviving or revisiting or seeing again something that you already thought kind of out there and separated from you. So I was really happy to republish some of my pictures that already had worked in black and white. The second part was an even more interesting section, because here I actually didn't limit myself only to pictures that had worked before. I decided to also give the opportunity to old pictures that didn't work before, that I had discarded already, to be rediscovered, to be revisited, to give them the benefit of the doubt, let's call it. In that case, what I did was just go through all of my pictures and just try to see what things work. Just quickly switching in Lightroom some toggles of black and white. You can see already more or less if some pictures have potential or not. I was happy to actually notice that more pictures than I thought actually had a good potential, and when I posted them, I got very nice comments about them. And more important than the comments, it was very interesting that I felt satisfied, and it also in a way felt like just taking new pictures from scratch, because these ones I of course had already forgotten about in a way, but not forgotten in the same way as the first group. But this is forgotten and also kind of thrown in a graveyard or something. The third group was the completely new pictures. This part, of course, doesn't only include the pictures itself, but the act of shooting. This is the part that's, I think, most challenging, because it forced me to have a different look at how things are done and how things are executed, let's say, out in the field. That means that every time that I was out there with my camera, I had to think in a way in black and white. Of course, some cameras provide some ease in this part of the process. For example, that you can already put black and white, but not necessarily shoot in black and white, so that you can see how this helps. But I was trying to avoid that for some reason, not for anything in particular. And I noticed that shooting or thinking in black and white at the very least made me think differently about contrast, about color, about that I'm not trying to look for subjects that differ from the background in the way they are colored, let's call it. But actually, I was actually looking for parts of the image that were framing my characters. So in short and in general, this part actually just opened my mind into having different ways of looking at how I was shooting. And now actually more often than not, when I'm shooting in color, I'm thinking on some of these techniques that I kind of forced myself to learn when I was shooting in black and white. So all of this, as I mentioned before, doesn't necessarily mean, hey, this is your style now, but in a way, it gives you more tools for your toolbox for when you are producing new content, and that content will be filtered already by the things you like and things you don't, hence creating your natural style. And now let's talk about the tips. Here I want to mention a few things that I've found, but that I'm also going to follow in the future on my journey of trying to get to my own personal defined style. The first one is shoot consistently and experiment often. As I mentioned, forcing yourself out of your comfort zone is important, of course, because you want to try the new styles, but even more important because trying the new style will actually give you more tools for your toolbox. And it's all about that. Everything that you will produce based on what you already have learned, and that will already shape your own style. Second point is study what you like. So you probably already are following a bunch of people whose work you like a lot. That can be movies, that can be music, that can be photography, that can be whatever. Try to analyze why is it that you like it, and you will find that more often than not, that is closer to the style that you are trying to produce, because also, as I said, what you consume defines what you produce. So what I would recommend in these cases, and what I'm doing as well, is try to create some sort of mood board where when you find something that is inspiring and catches your eye a lot, you can save things there and then come back to it every once in a while and try to see what is it that's consistent about it. More often than not, that will be the style that you want to gravitate towards too. Third tip here would be to identify what you like from what you produce. So similar to the second point, but actually more personal. So this is where the whole introspection point comes into play. Every once in a while, go back to your work and try to see what is it from that work that you like a lot. Once you do that same analysis with the second point of coming back to it and try to find the patterns, you will see again that you have already kind of a defined style. And if you double down on it, then of course you will get closer to that consistent and standardized style. And of course, never forget that style will end, and at some point you will start gravitating towards some other points. So what you can even do in this case is go back to your previous work in phases, right? Per year. What were you looking at in 2020? What were you looking at in 2021? What were you looking at in 2022? So on and so forth. And maybe you'll find eras already in your work if you've been doing it for long enough. Next point is embracing limitation. This is related to the gear point that I mentioned before, and sometimes, as I mentioned, we tend to gravitate towards certain specific choices in gear. In my case, I tend to not take pictures very wide. Even if I'm with a zoom lens, I tend to punch in a little bit. But what if I force myself to just shoot with a 16mm lens all the time? I will probably find new things about my own style and new tools for my own toolbox. So the recommendation here is try to give yourself some limitations. Try to shoot with certain lenses that are different from the ones that you normally use. Try to shoot with cameras that are different from what you normally shoot with, or try to give a chance to different styles, like what I did with black and white. But there are other styles like this that you can try, like doing street photography all the time if you don't do it, or doing night photography or long exposure photography. There are certain techniques that you can experiment with and kind of force yourself into so that you can get the tools that you need for your toolbox. And last but not least, be patient. Patience is not my personal strong point, so I really struggle with it. But I know, and analyzing my work from previous years only confirmed that I need to have patience, because only over time style will evolve. Don't try to rush style. This is not something that actually helps on trying to get one. You can fall into the trap of copying someone one-to-one, or even just producing bad work that you won't even like, which is the opposite of what you actually should be aiming for. And practice reflection. As I mentioned many times in this video, introspection, reflection, and actually getting to know yourself more helps into getting things out there. What I've done, and what I've also talked about in other videos, is journaling. That really helps a lot. That really helps on knowing yourself personally more, not necessarily on the style, but that already can give you certain guidelines or reasons on why you're picking certain choices when going out and shooting pictures. So that is it on style. Try to know yourself better. Try to get yourself out of the comfort zone and study what you like, because that's most likely shaping what is it that you produce. If you really like this video, go check this other one where I talk about journaling and trying to know yourself a bit more so that you can produce better content. Thank you very much, and see you in the next one.